I do not own the rights to this music.
I surrender all to him. I freely give. I will ever love and trust him in his presence daily live. I surrender all. I surrender all.
Hello, and welcome to Sunday School Summary with Brother Ron. Sunday School lesson for Sunday, March the 15th, 2026. Our reference material for the Sunday School Summary is based upon the International Sunday School Lesson Series as published by the Sunday School Publishing Board. As the Spring 2026 lesson series, we are discussing the social challenges that Christians have historically faced in the practice of their Christian faith in fulfilling their obligation to neighbors, family, community, and to God. The Spring Lesson Series is categorized into 3 units or groups of lessons, and we are in Unit 1, and we are discussing our obligation to our neighbors. The title of our third lesson comes from Unit 1, and it's titled Giving Generously, or We Have a Responsibility to Give According to Our Blessings for the Benefit of All. The key verse comes from Matthew chapter 25, verses 42 through 45, and they read as follows. For I was hungry, and you gave me nothing to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger, and you did not take me in. I was naked, and you did not clothe me. I was sick and in prison, and you did not look after me. So Jesus is saying that we have a responsibility to the least of us. And when we do for the least of us, we do it for Jesus. The title of today's lesson, Giving Generously, from the books of Deuteronomy and Matthew. Now, the lesson begins in the book of Deuteronomy. God told Moses that he would not allow him to cross over into Canaan with the new generation of Israelites. Moses gave a farewell address to the Israelites as they prepared to cross over into the promised land of Canaan. And Moses reminded and reaffirmed to the Israelites about their history, identity, and their responsibility to follow God's commandments given to Moses at Mount Sinai. And Moses specifically addressed the commandment to be generous in lending and giving as a condition of God's continued blessing in the new land, which brings us to today's lesson. There are 3 summary lesson points for today. Easing the burden of poverty should be a human endeavor, and that's from Deuteronomy chapter 15, verses 4 through 6. Generosity makes room for more, and that's from Deuteronomy chapter 15, verses 7 through 11. And when you ignored the least of these, you ignored Christ, and that's from Matthew chapter 25, verses 42 through 45. The passages for the lesson today revolve around the key words of faith, wisdom, identity, and the word. And we know that faith is the complete trust, assurance, belief, or confidence in God. It is the faith to give generously and responsibly based on our faith in Jesus Christ in today's lesson. Wisdom is the ability to apply experience, knowledge, and understanding to produce good judgment. It is the wisdom to exercise compassion and care for the poor or the least of us in today's lesson. An identity is the unique set of characteristics, beliefs, values, and experiences that define a person. And Moses reaffirms and reminds the Israelites of their identity and whose they are in today's lesson. And the Word is the scriptures inspired by the Holy Spirit that communicate God's will, laws, and prophecies as embodied by Jesus Christ. It is our responsibility to feed the hungry and give water to the thirsty, to take in the stranger, to clothe the naked, and to care for those sick and in prison, because we are doing it for Jesus and not for ourselves in today's lesson. Our first summary point is easing the burden of poverty should be a human endeavor, from Deuteronomy chapter 15, verses 4 through 6. And these passages, Deuteronomy talks about helping people who are struggling is a responsibility we all share on a national, state, local, and personal level based on the law of Moses and Jesus' teaching. He says that there will not be any poor among you, because the Lord will surely bless you in the land that the Lord is giving you. And he says that if you obey the Lord your God, and you are careful to follow his commandments that he was giving them today, that is Moses. And he says that when the Lord blesses you, as he has promised, that you will lend to many nations, but borrow from none, and you will rule over many nations, but not be ruled by none. So when we are blessed, we have a responsibility to pass that blessing on to others so that God can bless those who are not as fortunate as we are. Our second summary point is generosity makes room for more, and that's from Deuteronomy chapter 15, verses 7 through 11. And in these passages, the Israelites are commanded to give. And the passages reads that if there is a poor among your brothers, he says, then you are not to harden your heart or shut your hand from your poor brother. He says, instead, you are to open your hand to him freely and loan him whatever he needs. And he carefully admonishes them to be careful not to harbor this wicked thought in your heart. So not to trick them, because the seventh year is coming up, which they were commanded to forgive debt. So he is telling them, don't try to trick them and wait until the seventh year. He says that so that you could look on your brother grudgingly and give him nothing. He says he might cry out to the Lord against you, and you would be guilty of sin. He goes on to say that give generously to him, and do not let your heart be grieved, or don't give it grudgingly and worry about it. He says, because this is the Lord your God will bless you in all you work and in everything which you put your hand to. So our blessing is contingent upon how we treat others. He goes on to say, for there will never cease to be poor in the land. And that's why he's commanding them to open wide their hand to their brother and their poor, needy in the land. So he reinforces their responsibility to collectively care for the poor. Our last and final summary point is when you ignored the least of these, you ignored Christ, and that's from Matthew chapter 25, verses 42 through 45. And in these passages, the lesson concludes with Jesus' continuation and emphasis of the commandment of giving from Moses in his sermon at the Mount of Olives. And Jesus used a parable to express the theme of this commandment. In the parable, God separates the sheep from the goat based on their care for the poor at the final judgment of the nation. The parable illustrates and reinforces the commandment of responsibly giving as commanded by Moses. And the point of Jesus' parable was to teach and remind his followers that how we care for the poor and those in need is a reflection of how we treat Jesus himself. So our actions either praise Jesus or they are a sin against Jesus. And in Jesus' teachings, he said, for I was hungry and you gave me nothing to eat, and I was thirsty and you gave me nothing to drink. And he says, and I was naked and you did not clothe me, and I was sick and in prison and you did not visit me. And of course, the goats ask, when did this happen, Lord? When did I not treat you well? And Jesus responded, when you his answer was, I tell you, whenever you did not do these for one of the least of these, then you did not do it for me. So when we do right and we give and we care for the poor and we clothe the naked and we feed the hungry, we are doing it for Jesus. And we are doing it for God and not ourselves. This is Brother Ron with the Sunday School Summary for Sunday, March the 15th, 2026. Thank you for watching. Have a blessed week, and we hope to see you next Sunday for another edition of Sunday School Summary with Brother Ron.